No.
If that's the case, did you learn anything about the case of Austin Tice during this process?
So with respect to Austin Tice, we continue to call on the Syrian regime to ensure Austin Tice and every U.S. national held in Syria are able to return home. We continue to work every available path to ensure his return home. We've engaged extensively with regard to this case, trying to bring him home, and we're not going to give up until we do.
You might want to take this one from me. As you know, Austin's mother was in town last week. She gave an interview and she said that she's seeking access to State Department report from 2020 fall about the trip of Trump administration official to Syria. The report was not shared with the family, which contains significant details about how the Syrians are trying to provide proof of life. Are you willing to come up with a report?
So I can't speak to that specific report. We have obviously been engaged with Austin Tice's family, including his mother. I will just say we, as a parent, I think every parent cannot imagine what it is she must be going through. And so people here from the department engage with her on a regular basis to talk about this case and update her on the work that we are doing to try to bring him home.
Thank you. This might also be a good segue to the details about the latest information about the U.S. soldier was detained in Russia. What do you know? Anything new? And are you guys seeking access to?
So this is one where, it's often the case. There's not much I can say. You're aware of the privacy rules and our inability to say very much about these cases when we don't have a privacy waiver. I can confirm that a U.S. citizen has been detained in Russia. Whenever a U.S. citizen is detained abroad, consular officers seek to aid him with all appropriate assistance, and we are doing so in this case. Not able to say more. Unfortunately, the Pentagon is able to say some more. I think they've done so publicly, and I would refer you to them for that. But I just have to say the same thing I always do when asked about a U.S. citizen who has traveled to Russia, which is our travel advisory is at a level 4 for a reason. U.S. citizens should not travel to Russia for any reason. It's dangerous. You risk being detained. You risk other threats to your health and well-being. And so for any American citizen anywhere in the world, whether they are here in the United States or whether they're in some other country, if you are considering going to Russia, don't do it. Just could not be less complicated.
Thank you. One last one from me. We've heard little of statements coming from Russia about British potential participation in Ukrainian war, and they say that they're gonna target British weapons, whether it's inside or outside of Ukraine. This begs a question. It goes back to a question that we discussed with you, with Vedant, with Ned, more than a year and a half. Why is it that Ukraine doesn't have a right to target Iranian, North Korean, targets, whether it's inside or outside of the region?
You're proposing that Ukraine should widen the conflict beyond even Russia, but to other countries and bring other countries directly. Hold on. Bring other countries directly into the conflict. I would just say that is a rare question that answers itself. I don't think that would be in anyone's interest. Go ahead.
Thank you.
No, go in front of you. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matt. Just a quick follow-up on Rafa offensive. You said it is limited, not a major operation, but do you think it's a constructive approach to go into Rafa right after Hamas accepted a ceasefire there, and at a time when many Palestinians were on the streets celebrating the possibility of a ceasefire?
So let me just make one thing clear, which is Hamas did not accept a ceasefire proposal. Hamas responded, and in their response made several suggestions. It's not the same as accepting. The statement that was issued yesterday that was widely reported, and I'll blame the reporting because it's what the statement said, is not an accurate reflection of what happened. They responded as people do in a negotiation process, but it was not an acceptance. Now that said, we are trying very hard to get a ceasefire agreement over the line, as I said a moment ago. And I will just say, separate and apart from an operation in Rafa, the scenes that we saw in Gaza, when you see people coming out in the streets and celebrating what they thought was a ceasefire, number one, tells you just what they've lived through. I mean, you know that obviously, but you really see just the joy on people's face, what they've lived through, and the emotion in thinking that they might have some hope that this conflict will come to an end. But also, I can say for everyone here, just confirms why we think it's so important to get this ceasefire agreement over the line and why we are going to continue to push for it.
Just a quick follow-up. I think you didn't comment on whether or not you find Israel's approach constructive.
So I spoke to this earlier in the process, which is we don't want to see a major military operation. They have said this is a limited operation. There are some legitimate purposes, like I said, in keeping Hamas from depriving revenue from Rafa Gate, but at the same time, we don't want to see Rafa Gate shut, so we want to see it reopen. So I'm not going to comment, I'm not going to pass judgment one way or the other, whether it's constructive or not. What is important from our perspective is that we not see a major military operation go forward, and we've made that, I think, pretty clear. Go ahead.
Clarify, it sounds like this is the case. The Secretary last week multiple times referenced this generous and flexible offer that Israel had put forward, and you're saying this is not what he was referring to, what that Hamas put forward or accepted yesterday?
There was an offer. He was referring to the offer that was put forward some 10, 11 days ago, April 26th, I believe it was. That's the offer that was on the table. Hamas seemed to make clear that they, in their public statements, that they accepted that offer yesterday. That is not what they did. They responded with amendments, call it a counter-proposal if you want, and we're working through the details of that now.
And can you give us any updates on the military pier that's being constructed in Gaza? Do you expect that the Rafa operation is going to delay its construction or operation?
So I would really refer you to the Pentagon for details on that. Just because they're the ones that are actually doing the construction and doing the operation, they'll have the latest details on it. I would certainly hope that a Rafa operation would not delay it. It's in a different part of Gaza from where they would be operating. If anything, it just shows why it's so important to get that that pier finished. But that said, no one should think that the pier. I mean, no one should think that the completion of this pier and the opening of that route is in any way a replacement for Kerem Shalom and Rafa being open. Getting that pier finished is not sufficient means to close other gates. It's not sufficient reason to operate in the south and disrupt the delivery of humanitarian assistance, because even when that pier is open, the amount of aid it can deliver a day, somewhere around 100 trucks, in no way can replace what needs to come into Gaza through these other gates. Very good. Someone that's been watching the Pentagon briefings. I wish I had time. No offense, I wish I had time to watch their briefings as well as do my own. I just don't. Janny, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. Regarding the U.S. and South Korea's defense cost sharing, it has been reported that if former President Trump is re-elected, South Korea's defense cost sharing will increase significantly. Recently, there was a discussion on the defense cost sharing between South Korea and the United States in Hawaii, as you know that. Will defense cost sharing be increased under the Biden administrations? If so, what percent will increase?
I just don't have those numbers at my fingertips. Sorry.
But you don't have anything for because you have.
I mean, in terms of the percentage, it's not.
Someone
I'm happy to take it back and try.
All
to
right,
get
thank you. And have another one. And recently, UN resolution to prevent nuclear weapons in space were rejected by Russia's veto. What do you think about the UN's permanent members imposing penalties to veto abuse?
So, as we said at the time, we were incredibly disappointed that Russia vetoed what should have been a quite uncontroversial resolution regarding the obligations of state parties under the Outer Space Treaty. It should be clear, I think, that no country should have reservations about prohibiting putting a nuclear weapon into orbit. And in terms of potential actions, I don't have anything to preview from here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Matthew. Politico just reported that and I'm quoting from the report, administration is holding up shipments of 2 types of Boeing-made precision bombs to send a political message to Israel, end quote. Is this true?
I think Michelle asked me that exact question 5-10 minutes ago, and I answered it.
Okay, sorry. Now that Israel has invaded Rafah, is the department considering any actions such as sanctions or withholding aid from Israel?
I also answered that question earlier when I said we are not going to preview policy options at this time.
And finally, 6 lawmakers from the Congressional Executive Commission on China has sent a letter to the State Department asking for state to use its existing rewards program to seek firsthand information on forced organ harvesting in communist China and disrupt the illicit trade. The State Department has expressed concerns about this issue before publicly and in the human rights reports. Do you have any response to the letter, and will state consider using the rewards program to stop forced organ harvesting?
I'm sure have received that letter and will respond in due course to the members themselves.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. 2 questions.
Thank you.
Common questions. One, as far as conflict in the Middle East or Gaza or Hamas and Israel is concerned, first, on October 7, Hamas attacked the innocent people in Israel. Now, innocent people are being killed or they are dying in Gaza because of basics they are not getting. My question is that Hamas may be a common problem for the common people in Gaza, and how can you describe for the common people we are negotiating with Hamas? Is Hamas a terrorist organization or is it a political organization?
It is absolutely a terrorist organization.
So why are we negotiating then with them?
Well, we don't. Hamas is holding civilians hostage, including American citizens, and we want to see those American citizens return home. So it's also true that Hamas is one of the parties to this conflict and has the ability to end it. So we think it's appropriate. We're not in direct negotiations with Hamas, but obviously we're engaging with countries in the region, Qatar and Egypt, who have the ability to talk to them. And we think it's appropriate to do so because we want to see these hostages return home, especially the American hostages, but the hostages of Israel and every other country. Remember, there's not just Israeli citizens who are being held hostage, and we believe this is the best way to do so.
Second, sir, Secretary of State and Secretary of Treasury both were in China recently, and both warned Chinese leadership about not to interfere in the U.S. elections and among others. Can you describe that, what kind of warning was and what was the response from the Chinese leadership?
So I'm not going to speak to that in any level of detail, but the Secretary did make clear, reiterating something that we have a message that we have delivered previously to the Chinese government, that any interference, any attempt to influence our upcoming election is something that would be unacceptable.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Just to clarify, you've called the Rafa operation limited, but you also said it had the appearance of being a prelude, your word, to a major operation.
I don't think that's what I said. It's not what I intended. I said that they have remember when they have described it as limited, it looks at this way to not be the major operation that you would see, say, for example, if they entered the neighborhoods where they have ordered evacuations. We don't know if it's a prelude or not. They've made clear that they intend to launch a major military operation, and we have made clear that we are opposed to that. I can't speak to.
So you're not calling it a prelude?
No, I can't speak to whether this is
Yoav
beginning or
Gallant
not.
is. I'm sorry.
go
Yoav
ahead.
Gallant is touring the Rafa area today, and he said, "I directed the IDF to enter the Rafa area, take the crossing, carry out its missions. This operation will continue until we eliminate Hamas in the Rafa area and the entire Gaza Strip." So that doesn't sound limited to me.
So they have made similar statements in the past about what
Yeah,
their
but
policy
they're there
intends to
now.
be, and we have made our statements about what our policy is, and we will continue to make that clear. Yeah.
I want to move to another region, Haiti. Do you have any updates for us on where we're at in terms of the deployment of that police force or security force now that the Presidential Council was put into place? What is the status of play on that at this point?
So we welcome the process, the progress in the political process that has taken place. We continue to work with our Kenyan partners and other countries for the deployment of the MSS. In terms of an exact deployment schedule, we have, I think for operational security reasons, not wanted to affix a public date to it, but it's something that we're working to make happen as soon as possible.
But are there any pre-elements, forward people going in now in Haiti from the U.S. or from?
Not that I'm aware of. Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, it's more of a Pentagon question.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah.
That's kind of like why I'm. Yeah.
Yep.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So just back to Rafa, prior to Israel taking control, Hamas was collecting revenue, as you said, of those goods. Can you go into more detail on how Hamas was benefiting from that crossing, and also how you navigate the fine line of ensuring that they're deprived while also keeping it open?
Well, Hamas has been the government in Gaza, so they were performing, in addition to being a terrorist organization, they were the de facto government in Gaza, and so we're performing government functions, and that includes running a border crossing where you can collect customs. You can also, if you control a border crossing, collect, let's call them more irregular payments, and we have seen both of those things happen. And so it is a legitimate goal to try to shut off and choke off that revenue stream to Hamas. That said, we want to see Rafa open, and so someone needs to be on the Gaza side of Rafa to run that side of the crossing. The Egyptians can't do it. We talked about this very early in the conflict when we were trying to open Rafa in the first place, so someone needs to be there to do it, and we'll continue to work through how to get that gate open and how to keep it open.
And there's a report, can you confirm that there's a plot to assassinate Zelensky and other top Ukrainian figures that failed?
So obviously the Ukrainian government has made an announcement to that effect. We have been in close contact with them about that. I would defer to the Ukrainian government to speak to the details of it, but obviously it just speaks to the depravity that we've seen on display from the Putin regime since the outset of this conflict.
Thank you.
Right.
So given that Israel is pledging to wage an operation in Rafah using U.S. weapons that the U.S. opposes, is there any internal process going on to figure out what went wrong internally? Like how did the process allow the weapons to be shipped and then into a situation in which Israel's going to use them in opposition to what the United States wants done?
I don't think I can answer that question without presupposing a policy decision that we have not yet announced. We have made clear that and I've said it here, what our position is on a major military operation in Rafah, and Israel will make its policy decisions, and we will make ours.
So if they do continue this operation, will it result in a review of what went wrong?
Again, I'm just not going to speak to what policy determinations we might make or what internal kind of mechanisms would go into answering such a question.
Pakistan question real quick?
Sure, yeah.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer recently met with the Pakistan ambassador, and he relayed to the ambassador that Imran Khan's safety in prison was a high priority of the United States. Did he coordinate that conversation with the State Department? Does the State Department share that view that his safety in prison is a high priority of the U.S.?
So I'm not aware of any coordination. It may have happened, may have been conversations between this building and Senator Schumer and his staff, and I'm just not aware of them. It's certainly possible. But obviously we want to see safety and security of every prisoner in Pakistan or anywhere else in the world, something that every person, every detainee, every prisoner is entitled to basic human rights and protection under the law.
Follow, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. U.S. Ambassador in Pakistan.
And Donald Bloom met with the current leadership of Imran Khan's party. And after that meeting, there were like dozens of stories circulating in Pakistani media. Could you tell us something about that, as that meeting was arranged on the request of U.S. Ambassador Donald Bloom?
Dozens of stories circulating about a meeting
Different
with our
stories.
ambassador. What a new thing.
Different stories.
I haven't got a Donald Bloom question in a while. Yes, the U.S. Ambassador Donald Bloom met with the leader of the opposition in the National Assembly, Omar Ayub Khan, and other senior members of the opposition to discuss a broad range of issues important to the bilateral relationship. This includes U.S. support for continued economic reforms, human rights, and regional security.
Sir, after that meeting, the leadership of PTI, Imran Khan's party, told media that they have expressed their concerns about human rights violations, fabricated cases against Imran Khan, freedom of speech, and others. So what is your position on these issues, sir?
So we have addressed this any number of times, and our position is the same as we have stated it previously, which is we take no position on elections in Pakistan. We take no position with respect to any particular political party. And of course, we want to see basic human rights upheld, as I said in my answer to Ryan's
So
question.
one last question. Saudi Crown Prince MBS is visiting Pakistan in next few days. Recently, Iranian president was in Pakistan too. So how you see these trips when there is too much tension in the region?
So certainly we always support diplomatic engagement between our partners. I don't have any further comment on the visit between the Saudi Crown Prince to Pakistan, but it's, that kind of diplomatic engagement is routine and something that we support and encourage. But when it comes to Iran, of course, while we welcome regional de-escalation, we've seen the outbreak of limited conflict between Iran and Pakistan, we do remain skeptical about Iran's intentions, given its continued destabilizing behavior broadly in the region. Take one more, and then we'll wrap for today. You, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to ask you about Rafa. You said you do not want to see a large-scale military operation. But on a scale of limited versus large military operation, like what is acceptable for you when you configure for the concerns of, the lack of humanitarian aid, that this can be a problem, when you talk about the possible displacement of the people who are there already in the region? Like, where is this line for you, United States, where you're going to say, like, okay, this is now large scale operation, and we don't support that?
I'm not going to get into trying to define it here. I will add, though, that we have had detailed conversations with the Israeli government about this, much more detailed for obvious reasons than what we are willing to say publicly, or what is productive to say publicly, and they know quite clearly what our position is, and I think I'll leave it at that. That wrap for today. Thanks, everyone.